So now we're back to talking about Creepypastas and Trollpastas, and trust me you guys, it's even worse the second time around. Now I have 6 more pastas that are so shitty that I have to talk about all of them in this video. So let's get this thing started. Man, have you guys been pretty much heckling me to talk about this one for so long? Well, now I'm going to do it. Yeah, I loved this show growing up as a kid, but this pasta is just bull dookie. I mean, the mention of hell, the swearing, the blood, and demonic shit. Well, at least it would have been more of an interesting series finale, to say the least. Until recently, I had a job as an intern at Cartoon Network Studios. My job started in 2004, the same year Foster's Home came out. Yesterday I got fired from my job, but while I was walking out of the Cartoon Network studio building, I tripped on the floor and found a VHS tape. Crudely written on it was Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, unaired episode. As you would expect, I was interested, so I took the tape home. When I got back to my house with the VHS tape, I popped it into my old tape player. As soon as I popped the tape in, the intro played, but something was wrong about it. The animation looked very rough, like it wasn't finished yet. The audio was also pitched down 2 octaves and was very distorted. So after the intro, of course, the episode name was shown. The name of the episode was The Death of Mac. As you would expect, I was very shocked, but I thought at first that maybe this was just a morbid joke, seeing how this episode looked somewhat unfinished. So I finally got to see the episode. It starts off with Mac running to Foster's. The animation looks a bit better here, more like the show's normal quality, although the audio was still very distorted. Then Mac arrives at Foster's. The animation goes back to looking rough again, even more so than the intro. The audio is no longer distorted, however. Blue opens the door. He then says in an oddly deep voice,
"Oh, hi Mac. There's something I need to tell you."
Mac then says, in a slightly demonic sounding voice,
"What do you need to tell me?"
Blue then whispers to Mac. The whisper is oddly quiet. Mac then answers saying,
"What are you gonna do to me?"
Blue then answers in a very creepy demonic voice,
"Your life is mine!"
Then Blue pulls out a gun and shoots Mac in the gut. Mac, seemingly still alive, says,
"How could you, Blue?"
in a demonic voice. Blue answers Mac with,
"Because I can!"
before shooting him again, this time killing him. Then the sky turns a bloody red. Blue, still in a demonic voice, seems to be seeing something, but in reverse. Or at least that's what it sounded like. Mr. Harriman then comes out and says, "Master Blueguard, how could you kill Master Mac?" Blue replies saying,
"Shut up! You're going where Mac is going! Too loud!"
Blue then pulls out a chainsaw. Mr. Harriman's death is cut out and replaced with a black screen, but you can hear the audio of the chainsaw. After 30 seconds of a blank screen, it cuts to Blue in Foster's home. For some reason, Blue turns red in the scene. Then it cuts to an edited picture of Blue with soulless black eyes, small red pupils, and blood coming down from his eyes. Similar to Sonic EXE, while what sounds like distorted death metal music is being played in reverse with screaming and chainsaw sounds laid over the music. The scene happens for about 20 seconds. Then it cuts to a scene of Coco, Will, and Igual dead. Blue is standing on top of them with the same red eyes from before, holding a gun. Then Blue says,
"Almost all of Foster's is taken care of. Frankie is next."
The animation of this scene goes up in quality, about to the real show. Then it cuts to a blank screen with screaming and chainsaw sound effects played through it. Then it cuts to a scene of Frankie dead, with a chainsaw in her stomach. Blue then shouts in a distorted voice,
"Sweet dreams, Frankie!"
Blue then transforms into a demon. Then the last episode ends, with a black screen and text saying, "Blue has killed everyone in Foster's. The series is over. Goodbye." Then the credits roll, for some reason only listing writer Craig McCracken, before the VCR exploded in sparks. Oddly enough, however, while the VCR was totally destroyed, the tape remained intact. I could show it to you, but I've locked it in an impenetrable safe. stories today, this one is the most tolerable when it comes to cliches. To be fair, I was intrigued while reading the story, and at least it would explain Bowser's distaste for Mario. But yeah, what influenced Mario to suddenly kill Bowser's parents like that? I mean, hello? Well, at least we know who the true villain is. It's the writer for making me have to read it. I recently took a trip to Tokyo, and while I was there, I visited Nintendo World. I was browsing through the large section of games there, and while searching, I found this one game entitled Bowser Wii. On the box for the Wii game, the title was beautifully written in handwriting, and was encrusted with flowers. The letters were painted solid gold, almost shining there on the box. Behind the title was a picture of Bowser staring off the edge of a cliff into the sunset. His head was slightly down. I sort of laughed at this picture, not knowing what the game was about, and headed off to purchase it. I was a little confused since I hadn't heard this game anywhere before, but I guess curiosity got the best of me. The cashier was confused too, but happily accepted my money and let me purchase the game. A few days later, when I arrived home, I inserted the game into my Wii, sat down comfortably on my couch, and was ready to play. The title screen that showed on the Wii menu had a cherry feel in the background, painted like it was not designed for a Mario game at all. Then the words Bowser Wii slowly appeared into the center of the screen. Once again, they were in handwriting. I started the game. The title screen for the game was exactly the same, only had a picture of a smiling Mario way in the distance of the cherry fields. He looked as if he had just accomplished something sinister. I pressed start. Instead of the game asking you which file to create, it just skipped right to the game. It started in the forest, zooming in on a small creature looking like a puppy with a turtle shell. I nearly burst out laughing when I realized that it was Bowser. Two larger dog turtle-like creatures that looked older then appeared on the screen. I then realized that these larger beings were supposed to be Bowser's mother and father. Bowser started rolling on the ground frolicking, much to the delight of his parents, and they started frolicking around with him. I was also delighted by this, but then more horrible things started occurring. The scene cut to Mario in Princess Peach's castle. Mario was talking to a toad. They were talking about some rather disturbing topics, such as death. Then I was shocked when Toad announced that
it would be funny if Bowser's parents were dead. Tearing apart a beautiful relationship is always fun.
I started to get disturbed at this and thought about turning my Wii off, but I carried on anyways. The scene changed, and you were now playing as Mario. The mission was written at the top of the screen. It was, kill Bowser's parents. The mission name was written in blood red colors. I nearly threw up seeing it. I started heading over to turn off my Wii, but something told me not to. I carried on with the game. I was Mario, walking through the forest. In my hand was a silver, nicely sharpened knife. After a while of walking around, I eventually saw Bowser with his parents still frolicking. I started to sob softly, but I continued to play anyways. I went up to Bowser's dad, pressed the A button, and the knife coursed through his hide. Mario started cutting him like crazy. Bowser's dad was shrieking with pain. Bowser's mom was clinging tight to Bowser. I didn't want to do this, but I couldn't stop Mario. It was like as if the game was playing itself. He went up to Bowser's mom and started doing the same. Soon Bowser's parents were dead. The scene changed to Bowser sobbing softly next to his dead parents. He then screamed what you would never expect to hear in a Mario game. He screamed,
"Fuck you, Mario! I will fucking murder you one day!"
I was shocked. Then Bowser's shape started changing. It changed into a huge monstrous looking Bowser, kind of like Giga Bowser from Super Smash Bros. Melee. Still crying, only louder, Bowser walked away from his dead parents. Then the screen went black, and a single sentence appeared. It read, "Now you know the truth." My Wii froze at that point. I shut it off and took out the game. I then went down on my knees and started crying. After this day, I will never play a Mario game ever again, now knowing the sad history of his dire relationship with Bowser. But if I may steal a line from AVGN, this boss doesn't even qualify as shit. It's the equivalent of shit taking a shit. Now, normally I would never steal lines from more successful web people. Web celebrities. Whatever. But if this story has taught me anything, you can steal whatever you want and make the story a bajillion times better. Yeah, and gas prices might stay under $3 for a week before jacking up to $5 again. This is even worse than Summer's Tears. No doubt about it. If you want to skip this one, be my guest. But as for me, I'm gonna try and rid my memory of this shit pasta. Wait. What does it say? I became a fan of Summer.avi's webtoon series, Game Central Summer, ever since I saw her flash animations on DeviantArt. In fact, I knew her. I lived not too far from her. I knew Mitzi, her twin brother, Mitch, and even Nikki in real life too. Now, since I kept in touch with Summer, she let me see her animated episodes at least a day or two before she submits them to the internet. One of the animations on our page, Some Universe, is a cute and mildly entertaining series. It is a little immature, but I like it a lot. Recently, I heard that Summer was working with N at the studio when they made all the Pokemon Best Wishes episodes, and when I had come to visit them, Ash had told me that Summer and N weren't there today, and that they were on a trip until they were getting over something that was bothering them. Ash also told me that it was thought that Summer had completely recovered from whatever was making her and N act so strangely during the Summer's Tears incident, and that it had affected their normal lives afterward. Recent claims from the Team Plasma grunt who found the Summer's Tears video, however, indicated that in 2010, before she had met N, she went through another similar incident 3 years ago. It was the summer of 2012, and the episode Myuu, Cove, and Team Rivalry had recently premiered on Cartoon Network. Summer was working on 2 shows now, and had started showing signs of stress, when she announced that she was working on another episode that would be 100% of her own writing. This terrified some of the staff who worked on both shows, but they were hesitant to bring up Summer's Tears, and the Pokemon crew from Cartoon Network saw no reason to reject Summer's idea. An early version of it was made, and the grunt who found Summer's Tears managed to make a digital copy of this as well. Ash then gave me a VHS tape, which had no title, so I couldn't make out what it was. I was about to ask him where he had gotten it and what it was, when suddenly, he was gone and there was only an empty Pokeball in his place. Seeing as I had a VHS to DVD burner that I got for Christmas last year, I decided to get a blank DVD R disc and put it into the DVD side of the burner and the video inside the VHS side. After about 30 minutes or so, it popped out the disc in the video. I think that's what they're supposed to do when a disc is done burning. Anyway, I popped the DVD into my computer. Autoplay popped up, of course, because I had modified my computer to do so. I decided to look in the folder for it. There was a movie file that went by the name of Summer.avi. Summer? I then double-clicked the movie file as Windows Media Center popped up, and to my surprise, it was playing an episode of Some Universe, which is odd because the series is new for 2013. When the opening played, I noticed that the contrast of the animation was slightly brighter than usual, and the theme song sounded harsh, and the music had been replaced with, well, it's hard to describe. It sounded like a recording of 2 men walking around an empty room, silently muttering to each other. Every once in a while, you could hear a door open in the background, and the sound of objects hitting the ground, like a fork or even a knife. This was what first struck me as odd, but I ignored it and went on with watching the rest. The story began with Summer, Ash, and the others walking down the path in the forest like normal. Summer was talking about how she met the main 6 in Princess Celestia. Iris usually comes back with a sarcastic remark or hits Summer on the top of the head with a Pokeball. However, in this episode, she stalled me. She began screaming at Summer, shouting more like it. She insulted her, yelling profanity in her face too. By now, my stomach was churning. However, Summer didn't seem to react. She looked at Iris like she was explaining something to her. After 2 minutes of Iris yelling, N looked at her like she had just said a joke. Another thing that struck me was Ash. He had actually laughed at what Iris had done, laughing hysterically in fact. Next we see Jesse and James at a doctor of some sort, probably emergency medicine. James, obstructed in a view by a hanging lamp, is crying loudly with Jesse trying to comfort him in an unusually warm fashion. "It hurts, Jesse. It hurts." Suddenly, the door of the room is smashed open by a new character, a surgeon. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Jesse was escorted out of the room. James was shown. His hair was a mess, his right eye was bandaged with black marks on it, his nose was trickling blood, and parts of his clothes were missing. The disturbing part was he had broken both arms and legs beforehand apparently, and said paraplegic. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion that the others had beaten him up and tried to break his limbs. The camera stayed on his mangled face for a few seconds, still as a picture, silent as ever. Something was wrong here. Why would Summer make something like this? I clutched my Brian Griffin plush, and it began playing all by itself. It was like something made me watch this. After that horrific scene of an injured James, I then saw an extreme close-up of Summer's house. But it looked as though the colors had been dulled down to an almost sepia tone. The house looked all wrong. The windows were busted out, and the walls looked dirty. There were small greenish-purple footprints going up the wall to the middle upstairs window. Someone was reading an Edgar Allan book on her bed. The quality is not perfect. Tyrion is shown under Summer's pillows as he crawls out on all fours in a comedic way and pops up behind her, still oblivious. I laughed because his eyes were swirly like from that PETA game, Pokémon Black and Blue. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head, still in a cartoonish fashion of course. But this was different. He and she stayed still like this until she started kicking and struggling. Tyrion held her like this until she died. A zoom in on his face revealed extremely small, bloody human eyes. Ugh, I exclaimed. I hadn't been this disgusted since I had watched that Shed MOV video. I was about to turn off my TV and eject the VHS until a weird image of Summer crying appeared, whose eyes had begun to open and revealed pitch black eyes with red pupils and sharpened teeth covered in blood smiling at me. She looked a lot like that Sonic EXE creepypasta. The image stayed on screen for about 30 seconds before the credits played, but instead of the instrumental of the theme song, there was some odd music that sounded a lot like a combination of Hypno's Lullaby and The End's Room. And then the episode ends. Stunned, I went to rewind the tape to see if the tape Ash gave me was real or just my overactive imagination. When I tried to rewind the video, the tape seized up, so I took the tape and opened it up. The film had split an inch from one reel all the way down to a few inches from the other one. I wished that the tape had survived long enough for me to get some more screenshots from it, but alas, the film tore badly, and during repairs, I lost all but 5 minutes of the episode. After I regained myself, I heard the phone ring. I picked it up, and it sounded like a grunt from the studio Summer worked for. She told me that Ash wanted to speak to me. I then heard his voice on the phone, asking if I uploaded Summer's new Flash episode on DeviantArt yet. I told him everything about the Flash video I saw. I asked him why Summer made it. He sounded confused. He said she didn't make a video like that at all. He also said to go to his Twitter account before hanging up. And so I did, and his reply was this. Here's the explanation you've been waiting for. The episode. I'm deeply sorry, from the bottom of my heart, but I didn't know why Summer made that episode, but I do know this. The idea for the episode goes back as far as you think. See, when Summer's niece died in 2009, Summer decided to make this episode to express her feelings, but N didn't approve of this, so he gave it to me to hide in a secret room, and 4 years later, I gave it to you. I am sorry, I really am, but me, Summer, and her friends are just the ones who made the episode to express her feelings. That's it. I am so sorry, Alex. I am so deeply sorry. Best wishes, Ash Ketchum, and everyone involved with Summer.avi. Hey kids, did you ever want to see an episode of Dora the Explorer with hyper-realistic eyes and Dora is shown ripping off Boots' face with such nauseating detail? Well, if you didn't want to, then you shouldn't click on this video. But seriously, this has near as many cliches as the last pasta did. I mean, there's the hyper-realism, the blood, the cupcake reference, the fact that you had this DVD for a long time and only now does it decide to fuck around with you. I mean, I don't think I have to say this pasta sucks, do I? Well, too bad. This pasta sucks! Hey! I used to love Dora when I was a little girl. I honestly don't like her all now, but when my cousin Lauren asked me to babysit her 18-month-old son Lucas, I decided that Dora would entertain him a bit. We watched a few episodes on an old DVD I found in my baby box. We were having a great time and I realized that it was time for Lucas's nap. So I paused the TV and put him to bed. After he was asleep, I went back to turn on the TV. The second I walked into the room, I heard the intro. I thought I paused it. Oh well. I decided another episode couldn't hurt. After all, I wasn't doing so well in Spanish. I sat down on the sofa and filled with one of Lucas's little toy cars. I wonder what episode of Family Guy, my favorite show, would be on that day when a blast of static interrupted my thoughts. I grabbed the remote and muted it quickly. When it stopped, I turned the volume up to 1. Dora was speaking, but she had a grim expression on her face, rather than her usual friendly smile. She said,
Hello. Today we're going to learn about a monkey's body.
Her voice was male. I was a bit confused. Suddenly, her eyes turned hyper-realistic and bloody. I fought the urge to touch the screen to be sure it was just an image. She grinned hugely. I shuddered as I saw her smile grow larger. Her teeth were sharp and her eyes were suddenly tiny. I saw a flash or something. I nervously played it back and saw a mutilated kitten. I gasped and tears filled my eyes. I'm usually only emotional when I get angry, but I love kittens. And I looked at it and realized it wasn't a kitten, but my kitten, Stitch. Seeing my sweet baby like this made me sob. I clutched my Brian Griffin plush and the DVD began playing all by itself. It was like something made me watch this. I saw Dora grab Boots' ear and slowly and graphically tear his face off. Ugh, I exclaimed. I hadn't been this disgusted since I read that cupcake fanfic. I hugged my Brian as Boots howled. I was crying hysterically. I heard lots of ripping and screaming noises, but I was too afraid to watch. I sat huddled under a blanket until the noise stopped. It's over, I thought. Oh my god, how awful. Still holding Brian, I emerged from the blanket and ran to the bathroom. I vomited enough to feed an army. I turned off the TV, grabbed Lucas, and immediately called 911. Lauren and Jonathan came home in a rush, and I explained to the police what had happened. I reluctantly showed them the video, and they revolted. I insisted that they destroy it, but they instead recalled every copy of the video. Surprisingly, only a few had disturbing video. I was taken to therapy to get over the trauma. I honestly don't know what has become of the video. All I can remember was sitting in the police office, hugging Brian and begging them to destroy it. If you ever come across the video, please, I am begging you, contact the authorities. This has scarred me for life, and I don't want it to happen to you too. Now, I don't know much about Stick Stickly. I do know that he was a host on Nickelodeon's Nick in the Afternoon block in the mid-90s. Apparently, according to this story, Stick Stickly not only was on a different segment back in 1993, but it also ends with a connection to Camp Cove. Oh, fuck to the yo. To be fair, this story was kind of interesting until you got to the typical cliches, like Stick Stickly having some blood on him, and the fact that apparently Nickelodeon has episodes of Candle Cove is just insane. And given what I've been talking about today, that's saying a lot. Stick Stickly may be one of the least creative characters ever made, but he still holds a very special place in the hearts of 90s children for several years of hosting Nick in the Afternoon. Most information on Stick Stickly says he hosted Nickelodeon's Summer Afternoon block from 1995 to 1998. But I always swore that I remembered seeing him on TV earlier than that. I thought I was crazy for quite a while, but recently I found a small fan site for Stick Stickly that mentioned him hosting a 1993 afternoon block during the school year called Afternoon Snack with Stick Stickly. To my joy, the website even had videos of Stickly's segments. I watched one marked First Ever Stick Stickly Appearance. Stick Stickly was in front of a chalkboard with Afternoon Snack written on it in normal writing. His design was a little different. His eyes were smaller, he had no nose, and his mouth was a straight line instead of being curved into a smile. He made a couple of corny jokes, then said Rugrats was coming up. The video ended at that point. I watched the next one. There were 6 of them, and none had dates. but I could only assume that they were in chronological order. The second one was called Stick Gets Injured. Stick Stickly had the same face from the first video, but his body seemed a little worn. There were a few splinters sticking out of his side. His full dialogue.
Well, the dog next door buried me, but I managed to get it. The show you've all voted to see, Hey Do is up next. And don't forget to send in your postcards to vote for the special guest show you want to see. And remember, the address is...
He sang the classic song about writing to him, but the tune was different than later versions, much slower. After he sang the song, he stayed motionless for a few minutes before the video ended. The third was called Hang Stick. Stick Stickly was hanging in the air by a piece of string tied around his waist. A little boy who looked about 5 was also there, and the chalkboard had 6 dashes on it, representing a 6-letter hangman word. The kid was guessing letters, and each time he got one wrong, the string around Stick's waist would move higher. The game would be over when it reached Stick's neck. The kid kept guessing letters, and when the rope was one incorrect guess from Stick's neck, the letters filled in were C-NDLE. It was obvious what the word was, but the kid wasn't taking the game very seriously. Giggling, he guessed X. The rope moved to Stick's neck, and his eyes flashed out of existence, and were replaced by 2 X's. There was no sound for about 30 seconds. The kid stared at Stick's body. Then Stick's eyes flashed back to normal and he laughed, said he was fine, and that Wild and Crazy Kids was on next. The fourth video was called Stick Quits. Stick was ranting about something that presumably happened in a segment that the site didn't have a video of, saying no one respected him, that he was treated like a toothpick, how his father was a mighty ship, and complaining about how the dog kept burying him. The complaints seemed like jokes, but his tone was more serious than you expect. A little kid appeared, not the same as in video 3, and told Stick that all the children loved him. Stick was silent for quite a while, then sighed and said he would stay. He reminded us to vote in the guest show contest again, and said it was time for Rugrats. The fifth video was marked, Stick Gets Mad, with no sound. Like the description said, it was silent. Stick was moving very quickly, with body language indicating he was yelling. A little girl was cowering from him, clearly afraid. The girl eventually left, and Stick just faced the screen. His animation was so simple that I couldn't tell if he was talking. The sixth video was called The Winner Revealed. Stick had a dark red stain on the top of his head, and one of his eyes was an X. Stick made no mention of his appearance, and announced that the votes were in. It was time for the special guest show to air. His last bit of dialogue.
It's been a long contest, and the votes were close, but you, the kids, have decided. Coming right now, the classic you voted for, Candle Cove.
Let's end this video with a shitty gaming pasta. I mean, wow. Every cliche you can imagine is in this Trollpasta. Trust me, this is as bad as the death of Mac, if not worse, given that it ends with the protagonist somehow getting hurt, despite that he was merely playing a game. My summary does not do this creepypasta justice. You have to read it to understand how horrible it is. I was going through eBay to find a copy of Luigi's Mansion since my friend had given me it, and I wanted to play it. I finally found a cheap copy of $10. I was like, awesome! Since the rest were like $100 used. I bought it and waited for it. After a few days, I got it and excitedly put the disc in and started it. It started normally, or as normal as Luigi's Mansion gets, but I noticed when it started it said, "You were lucky enough to get a copy of the beta disc." I was really bummed out, because beta discs are so yesterday. I almost sold it and got a copy of the alpha, but something stopped me. Maybe this was the only one left. So I progressed, and when I went into the restroom, the time limit ran out. I knew all about the beta game over screen, but I never expected an alternative. Instead of a picture of a possessed Luigi, I got a picture of Luigi with normal eyes, but the iris in his eyes were red. Blood red. Crimson. All of a sudden, he charged at the cameraman, I guess. I saw the guy starting to run, but each time the cameraman faced with Luigi, he was closer than before. Then, his eyes returned to normal. Afterwards, I heard a wail of agony and Luigi screaming, "No! Please, one time! Please, please!" He started to sob in despair, and I felt bad for Luigi. All those years working alongside his plumber brother, I never expected this. I saw the nastiest thing that made me want to vomit all over the TV screen, but I managed to keep my vomit down. Mario's clothes were in tatters, his blood all over his face, his eyes fixed on me. His face was raked by claws. When Luigi saw this, he grabbed his poltergust and sucked himself into it. I was shocked to see this, but I saw Professor Egad, your helper, appear beside the poltergust and picked it up, laughing. And then he pointed it at me. I heard an evil laugh. I saw a text box appear with the words saying, "You're next." I looked at Egad and realized in horror he was pointing at me with a green speckled face, claws similar to the claw marks on Mario's lifeless face, and he flew at the screen and my TV shut off. I've had nightmares ever since, and I woke up last night from hearing the words, "You're next," and woke up with claw marks on my arm.